This trial is interesting because Marilyn Manson is not Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp is a Disney character. Marilyn Manson is Marilyn Manson. The guy is quite literally named after Marilyn Monroe and Charles Manson. His band members were named after a serial killer and a beauty queen. I think Twiggy Ramirez might be one. I don't remember. But it is very easy for people to visualize bad things from a dark act. His act is quite literally dark. That's his game. He is a shock rocker, going all the way back to Alice Cooper and the like. Well, this is going to be an interesting situation because he's also really close friends with Johnny Depp, and the cases are kind of spilling over into each other. Amber Heard kept bringing Marilyn Manson into the Johnny Depp case, along with her legal counsel, and oddly, Marilyn Manson may have a shot of pulling this out more because of what went down with Johnny Depp. Now, to start everything off, we need to look at the accusations. And I quite frankly do not know. I went in probably with the impression that, it's Marilyn Manson. He might be a bad guy. I don't know. He could be attracted to dark things. But let's explore an interview with A View and Evan Rachel Wood and her describing the situation. And to help me do this, I'm bringing in my great friend, who is a body language expert and also does statement analysis with a little psychology on the side, Gavin Stone.
Hi there.
How are you doing today, Gavin?
I'm great, thank you. Good to be here.
Good to have you. Now, I know that I've had you cover Amber Heard recently, and I'd say Amber Heard probably did not strain your skills very much. But I think that I have a feeling that Evan Rachel Wood maybe is a bit more of a difficult read. I'm not sure. I know that I'm seeing things, but I don't know if they actually mean anything. And I want to, bring them up as I see them and hopefully get your feedback and hear from you, because I could be completely wrong about, different things.
Let's have a look.
Amongst abusers.
Yes.
From the abused, basically. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, what drew you to him in the first place? And tell us how the grooming worked.
Well, in the first place, I was not drawn to him. He was drawn to me.
I see.
He approached me under the guise of work, false promises. And that is part of the grooming process. He was grooming me the second he said hello. Mm-hmm. Because grooming is when you present a false persona to somebody and you tell them lies to lure them into a false sense of security so that they become vulnerable around you. They start opening up. They start giving up.
She almost looks happy here.
Their secrets and vulnerabilities. And so you're mining information. Yeah. It's the epitome of a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Okay, that's something that kind of is odd to me, because it's almost like she's saying, now children, we're going to cast some spells, and if you look, the sheep went onto the mountains, and there's this actual smile. I don't. She's talking about being groomed here. Now that kind of bothers me. I don't. Maybe it's meaningless. I could be out there all wild, but another element is, okay, she didn't come in and give me specific information. She said he approached me. How? What happened? He came up to you? What happened there? And then it was I, me, and then you. Like it went right to conceptual.
Yeah, you've got a lot of context changes there. In fact, looking at that, the way you were talking about her being expressive as she's explaining, you could almost dub the Sound of Music over that. In fact, that'd probably be a job for Sadie. And sorry. I've just been handed a sandwich, and it wouldn't look out of place. She's smiling, and it's almost like she's doing this little dance. So yeah, it's not congruent with somebody you would expect to see when they're talking about themselves being groomed. You would expect them saying, "He was doing this to me. I was young and naive," and you would almost expect to see a frown on their face as they recall and recount what was happening, and given some kind of examples of what was going on. From the very beginning, I didn't like any of the statement when she said she started it with "well." Anybody who's studied statement analysis will know that's not a great start. It's kind of an indication that when a person's about to speak and they start with "well," if it's not in their baseline, then they're generally going to say something and not give you all of the information. She made a point of saying in the first place, and then went to, "It was not me drawn to him," rather than the contracted version, "it wasn't," and that it was, it was not me drawn to him, and he was drawn to me. To me, that the whole sentence didn't kind of work out, or wasn't structurally correct for somebody that would say something along those lines. Didn't add
What
up.
what would sound right?
So instead of saying "well," first of all, it wasn't me drawn to him; it was him drawn to me. I would probably say something, or expect to hear something more along the lines of, "He pursued me, not the other way around." That would be, more congruent. But she seems to have the other thing I noticed as well, there was a very well rehearsed answer when she was talking about grooming. It was almost like she was reading her own dictionary definition of grooming, not telling you what happened, but giving you a definition that fits her description.
Okay, now, and to be fair to her, could this be distancing because of trauma? Like, I don't want to go in it directly, so I'd rather talk about something than to actually describe what I went through with specificity.
Yeah, so I've got a couple of theories here, which all the way through this I've kind of flip-flopped a little bit with looking at what she's saying and then looking at the psychological side of it, of the fact that she was very young when she got with him. She was a teenager. He was in his late 30s. And you're looking at the fact that she was probably a little bit starstruck, has done a hell of a lot of stupid things, possibly, and then later on thought, I was young and naive and fell for all his BS. I shouldn't have done that. Has got a lot of regret, and he's changing it to fit how she sees it, and how it's going to be more favourable for her, not so much an accurate account of what happened. On the other hand, yeah, it could be something that could have been quite traumatic, and it's got her to the point where she can't think about it. She's got to distance herself from it, but that's not usually the case.
Mining information. Yeah. It's the epitome of a wolf in sheep's clothing. And once they have the information, once they know that you feel safe, they know that the manipulation can start. So that's part of the grooming process.
They start.
She seems like she is the character.
Yeah.
Like she's embodying the person who's luring them in at that moment.
It looks that way. It could also be a little bit of Jupiter's delight going on there. It could be a little bit of a case of, they're buying my story. I can see, I'm telling my story, I'm telling it, and all these people are all hanging on my every word, and you've got a little bit of Jupiter's delight mixed in with the storytelling. But it certainly doesn't seem congruent with somebody that would be talking about a story about grooming. Possibly the fact, like I mentioned earlier, the fact that you wouldn't probably frown in these instances could be down to Botox. So again, we've got to take that into account. But at the same time, not being able to frown certainly doesn't mean that you can't stop yourself from smiling. So hard to say at this point.
Crazy.
Using the information against you.
Exactly. And then later on, the information comes back. Yes.
Yeah. Now, when you were 19, you agreed to appear in his music video for his song, I think it's called Heart-Shaped Glasses. And you allege that he gave you a lot of drugs and alcohol. Again, you were only 19. And then had...
This nodding. There's something here. And I don't know what it is. You're the body language guy, so I'm asking you. But it seems almost like, yes, I want that. I need that. Like she's tallying up notes or something.
Yeah, it's almost like she's ticking off a mental checklist to say, yep, you're saying all the right things. These are the things that I want to be noted. And, I'm waiting for as soon as you've finished saying X, Y, and Z, I can jump in and kind of give my little bit that's going to put the cherry on the cake. Could be just habitual for her. Time will tell. I haven't seen her in.
Well,
any
she's an
other-
actress. She's an actress, and she is an actress. So I'm wondering, is she responding that way normally, like it is lines? I mean, the person's reading a card, and this is part of my problem too. Is what kind of arrangement was made with the interviewers? Like, is this your list of questions that you are to ask during this interview? What questions have cleared her representatives? So could it be something like that?
Highly likely. A lot of the answers that she gives, I think there's about 2 a little bit later on where she stutters a little bit, but at the moment everything seems almost like it's rehearsed, and she's been pre-warned what's going to be asked and made her mind up how she's going to answer.
Had you do things in the video that you never agreed to, including having sex with him on film. You say that he essentially raped you on camera. His lawyer now says that's not true, saying it was only simulated sex and that you were fully coherent and engaged in the shoot from planning to editing even. Manson says he did not have sex.
A lot of contempt through here.
Yeah,
A lot of contempt through there.
It's almost like she was expecting that.
But it could make sense too, right? If she's actually suffered at his hands, that son of that, whatever, like that inner disgust and rage. But I don't know.
You can kind of see, I wouldn't expect anything less from him, and kind of, that kind of agreeance of, yep, this is going exactly where I expected it to go. So yeah, there is that contempt. There is that kind of, nothing seems too out of place with what was going on there.
With you on that set. Can you tell us how did this video shoot affect you?
Now that last little
yeah, I didn't know whether we were going to bring that up, but yeah, it's almost like a distaste for what the lawyer's response was. So yeah, I did spot that, and I thought that was quite interesting.
And how do you respond to both his denial and his lawyer's denial?
Okay, now she's very uncomfortable here.
Yeah. So she's covering the throat area, scratching. She's got her eyes closed, and the blink rate does go up a little bit. And I can't remember what she said. Let's see what her response was.
Well, we did not have sex on set. I was raped on set. It's a difference. And when you're inebriated like that, you can't consent, especially as a minor.
Right.
Just switching the you.
Did you also see, as she said, you can't consent? You got that double shoulder shrug going on. It's only a very, very brief, but she answers. And what I did like was the fact that she didn't use. Earlier we were talking about the distancing. Now she's not distancing. She's gone from, they groom you and doing all these kind of actions to, I was raped on set. So you've got very specific, this is what happened. Nothing leading up to it, nothing else. But she's very kind of, there's no distancing anymore. This is what happened to me, very direct. The problem is as she said it afterwards and turned around and said, we were inebriated and you can't stop it. She's kind of given this shrug, which is incongruent with the statement that she's making.
I think it contradicts what he said in 2007. I think you should go back and read his interviews and see how he talked about the video then. And, these people very often tell on themselves. I don't even really.
She's been shrugging the whole way here.
Yeah. You've got about 4 or 5 different shrugs there with different statements that, again, all kind of aren't congruent with what's been said. People generally shrug when they say, I don't know. What time did you get here this morning? I can't remember. They don't shrug when they turn around and say, go back to his interview in 2007. It's not congruent with the body language with what's been said. So again, I'd want to probe further there and find out what's going on in her mind. The downside of watching a video by somebody else is you can't ask the questions you want to ask.
Have to say anything.
What did he say then?
He said, oh, it does look real, doesn't it? Wink, wink.
Wink, wink.
And haven't you?
You see the lip compression there again. She's obviously holding back on something there. Again, doesn't necessarily mean she's lying. It just means she's got more to say on that subject, and it's definitely holding a lot back. There was also the fact, like what you said earlier, Eric, about the facial expressions, about her almost being like kind of the party that was enjoying it more so than the party that was on the receiving end of it. So again, you got this incongruence of what's being told to what her face is saying. I would like to, if I was there in person, I would like to ask a few more questions and go into a bit more detail and see if I can get her to run through the events of what happened to find out more.
Say that this video was just an early instance of the abuse that happened to you, but you said there was much more through the course of the relationship. What was that other abuse?
I mean, we would have to sit here for 6 hours for me to go through everything, honestly. But ultimately, yes.
Back to the...
Yeah, so we got the moving of the hair over the back, you know, the downward look again now. She's not concentrating on what's being said, and very dismissive with the question. I do get the fact that there has probably been a lot go on over 6 years, but she could at least give some example, or at least give a look of like, oh, it was terrible. We had so much happen, you know, rather than sitting there happily like, oh, you know, we'd have to sit here hours having a chat amongst the ladies about how we, you know, it's very
dismissive.
Yeah,
she's. Now I understand that, you know, there's quote unquote imperfect victims, but she doesn't feel like it's affected, or maybe she's had so much therapy that it's okay, but there's a casualness to something very heavy. And you know, you've been around cops and stuff, so I understand gallows humor and things like that, but I don't know, it just feels kind of odd.
Yeah, and it could be the therapy she's had, and maybe the therapy itself has told her, look, whenever you're thinking about this, don't get too deep, don't get going down into a dark place. If you feel yourself going there, think of something else. So there are possible suggestions that it could be a coping mechanism or something along those lines. It's really difficult to say, and this is why every time I watched this video earlier, I'd see something and think that doesn't seem right, and then I'd think about all the angles, and then I think, okay, there could be a reason for it, and that's why I kept being indifferent with my decisions.
All right.
The acts of violence that he committed against me and a number of other victims, men and women, are absolutely.
I just wanted to say there again, you've got that distancing language with the acts of violence he committed against me. One thing I'll say about the Johnny Heard and Amber Depp trial, there was this thing where he said,
you just said Johnny Heard Amber Depp trial. You know that you did that.
I knew what I meant. I'm not going to go back and change it.
Oh, that's staying in, buddy.
Oh, thanks. Well, why not? But yeah, at least there was the congruence of he hit me, he threw something at me, she thumped me, there was the actual, you were told what was going on and about the individual incidents and what happened. In this, the acts of violence, it sounds like a very official terminology. It's almost like lawyer speak more so than, and you've got lots of lawyer friends, so they'll be able to tell you, more something you'd expect to hear from a lawyer than somebody telling you about their story.
You know, okay, that makes me think of something I came up with over the weekend. It's probably not original in any way, but it felt brilliant to me. And it was something along that line of, in statement analysis, like, were you there? I wouldn't be able to tell you that. Or I would have no way of knowing that. If you saw something or whatever. Did you see them breaking the window? I would have no way of knowing that. Well, no. The answer is no. But then I thought about it, and what I came up with was that the person who is making a statement could be quite literally crafting their testimony in the future.
Mm-hmm. And it's possible here that she's been kind of briefed by her legal team before she's gone on and been told what to say, what not to say anything that is going to give her defense away, or the case away, or play into the hands of the court, or anything that could be used against her. This is going to be an official statement. After all, it's on public television. It could be used in evidence. So, possible. Anything's possible at this stage.
Horrific, but the most insidious thing that he did and that people like him do is they completely fracture your sense of self. Mm-hmm. He made me forget who I was. And it's taken me years to remember. And
Remember?
Remember? Yeah, you spotted it as well. Almost like she's asking. You know, is she making the statement or is she asking them?
And it's taken me years to get back to myself and to even understand what had happened to me, because I really thought I was the only one. And I didn't find out until much later that not only was I not the only one, but that there was a pattern to his abuse. And that means it's calculated. And that means he is not going to stop until he is stopped. This isn't just somebody shooting blindly in the dark. This is planned. You know, there's a system that you are put through, that we were all put through.
The joy again. I swear every time. I don't know if she's embodying the person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I would definitely like to look deeper into that, and the best way would be to be able to sit down in an interview with her and kind of, you know, ask her about the grooming process and see if this whole hand dance starts to happen again that she seems to do every time she's talking about this grooming process and this system and this plan or whatever it is. She looks way too happy for somebody who's talking about grooming a victim.
Yeah, and that's what I can't figure out, because it does. If I mute the sound, what would you think she was talking about? Her kid's birthday party or something?
Yeah.
So I think it's important to expose that.
You often hear from abuse victims, I thought I was the only one, and then
Yes,
they find out they
very
were
often.
not. That's a very common
It is
refrain.
very common.
Well, we you know, the society around this issue is so geared around shame and blame and victim blaming, and that is by design. And you know, even in the way we speak about these things, you know, we're still asking victims the question why they didn't leave, and the fact that we're still asking that question tells me how much work there is to do. And nobody ever asked why the abuser didn't leave. You know, if he was so upset, if he hated you so much, you know, why are you hitting her? Why don't you just leave? You know, it's just because we're programmed. We're programmed to say these things, to ask these questions, but we need to start asking different questions.
And that's why
Okay, through all that now, yeah, they're stammering and stuff, but that's not necessarily bad. I mean, hell, I could do that trying to, even though my thought, I actually, sometimes the stammering actually feels legitimate because I'm trying to think of the right term at the time, and I'm thinking, but again, that excitement right there, and it, why does the excitement line up with the darkest points so often?
Yeah, it's almost like this is a game and a challenge that she feels she's kind of set out, laid out, ready to go and try and win, and this is all part of her plan. You know, so it's like I say, I'm so on the fence with this, and every time I look at something one way and think, okay, I think she's possibly been potentially dishonest here, I look at the flip side and think, hang on, is there a reason for it? Is there some kind of, you know, story behind that? And then when I put the two together, I've got that balance, and because I always manage to come up with something to counter it. So this has probably been the most difficult one yet. However, what I will say, even though her actions and expressions have been incongruent with each other, the whole time it has been congruent with. So she's not been happy when she's been talking about it one time, and then looked miserable another, then looked happy, then looked. She has stayed consistent
Every time.
with, yeah, so that in itself is probably a good thing too.
Yeah, and I was thinking, and like this last one too, it could be a happiness, like, I'm on to you, buddy. I'm on to you.
remains the most underreported crime in the country.
It is severely underreported, even more so with men, because there's more shame around this issue in regards to men. And it doesn't just happen to women. It happens to men, women, and children, all ages, all genders, all colors, all sexualities. It does not discriminate.
But do you feel like there's been an
Again, every single time. And she does seem to really like to go into speech mode.
Yeah.
Like away from herself and into the conceptual again, like, this is a chronic problem and I'm fighting for it. And that's fine. I mean, she is a representative I believe, who is behind getting a law passed called the Phoenix Law about the statute of limitations.
Yeah,
and extending that. But I don't know. It's a very
which is definitely a good thing and definitely a worthwhile cause. No two ways about it. So I have no argument with that at all. But yeah, you're right with the fact that you can see a total demeanor change when she's giving that kind of, she got the one hand going, so there's this and this and this, and you can see that she's gone into almost like you say, like this rehearsed speech mode, more so than answering the question, where she was very uncomfortable earlier and very different. Her actions were like this, more so than this expressive mode when she was giving that speech.
Even earlier, uncomfortable to expressive. It's a weird dichotomy, and I'm still having trouble seeing if she actually answered a question directly yet. And maybe I'm not, but I don't necessarily feel like she has. I feel like she's given some speeches and statements, but I don't know. I just doesn't.
Well, so far we haven't. We haven't heard anything about her actual physical experience. There's been no story of a particular event yet.
Right, and I understand not wanting to go into detail, but just even some of it, like, he pursued me. Well, okay, I was working on the set. He came up and even Amber Heard described her first meeting with Johnny Depp, and they met and they did this and that. I don't hear any of that. Now I know that if she doesn't like the guy, I wouldn't expect any kind of romantic look. Like Amber Heard seemed to almost have a romantic reminiscence to how she met Johnny Depp, which is odd. So I would not expect that. But even a matter of fact, like, he saw me, we did this, and I wanted to do such and such, and then he offered it. She just kind of generalized. He groomed me, he conned me, he whatever. Not how, not what.
There's no specifics there at all. And I can understand that there are time constraints on these television shows, and I do understand the fact that, they've probably been told before they even get onto the set, don't go too deep into anything, just, kind of give your answer, let them ask the next question and move on. But at the same time, you think, she would come up with something and turn around and say, this one occasion he threw a bottle at me, or on this one occasion he grabbed me by the throat and held me for ages, whatever. She doesn't have to go deep. I didn't go deep, but I'd give a couple of examples. So
right, if she gives like a bulletized list of subject matter versus actual subjects, if that makes sense.
Does any change with the Me Too movement? All what we've seen in the last few years. I mean, is there any reason for hope?
Absolutely. And the Me Too movement did give me a lot of hope. And sexual assault has had its day. And we are speaking about things like grooming and gaslighting. And these words were not on our lips just a few years ago. And now I truly believe domestic violence has to have its day. Violence that begins in the home begets other violence. It's a cycle, and it bleeds into so many problems in our country and our society that we are not even aware of. We need to really, peel the curtain back on this and start examining it.
And Evan, I just first want to thank you for sharing your story. I watched the documentary last night. It is so gripping and powerful. And I really hope it changed hearts and minds. And I'm grateful to you for your legislative actions that you've done as well. I have to ask you, and I know this is probably hard to talk.
That last nod there. I don't know. It's interesting. Well, I don't know. I'm probably reading into it, but it's a little bit of a.
I think that was a little bit of an ego boost from what the presenter was saying. You've done this, you've done that, you've done the other. It's really, really great, and I think she got a bit of a kind of thank you going on. But
which is, what, she did do a good thing. So maybe I should.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Talk about, but your bravery is just so inspiring. The abuse and trauma you went through, you got to the point where you tried to commit suicide. How did you come back from that? And how did you come back ready to inspire others and to fight this battle and take it on?
When somebody aids in the destruction of yourself and you forget who you are, you feel pretty broken and pretty empty. And honestly, the suicide attempt is another form of escape.
Yeah.
When you don't feel like you're going to get out of this hole, there's no way to leave, there's nowhere to go. That is one way of leaving.
There we go.
Yep. 6 or 7 shoulder shrugs again. Did you see them all?
The shrugs, and then coming out with a smile, and And when me,
Yeah.
I felt down in the dumps. I felt despair. I had to pull my way out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well spotted with the pronouns there. She does that a lot when she's talking throughout the entire video. It's very little that she said, I was in this situation. It's always, when you're doing this, when you do that. Could be just basically the way her speech patterns are.
Could be.
But usually when somebody has been a victim of something, they say how they felt and what they went through more so than like an external, when this is happening to you, you do this, you do that, you do the other. There was a lot of shoulder shrugs when she was talking about suicide, and a lot of incongruences with the body language, blink rate up and down all over the place. But yeah, it's yet again we've got that thing where, as you mentioned earlier, Eric, well spotted, she's still not directly answered the question. It's been a long drawn out story of
almost like a lecture, like, oh, here's my talk.
Yeah.
Very political. I mean, it is very much like a politician.
Yeah. So there's no kind of, there wasn't, when she said to her, how did you pull back from that? She didn't turn around and say, I really struggled. I had this and that and the other, therapy and a good friend, and that's what got me through it. Or I had to do it for other people, or anything like that. She's changed the context, and she's gone, well, when you get into this position, you.
Yeah, that's a great point, Gavin. And I mean, how many times have we seen in the interview where we're like, the person's like, I felt just such utter despair. And, one day I just looked at my kid and I thought, oh, wow, what if? And it helped me. It helped me kind of get through and move on. Or whatever it is. It could be, I just woke up one morning and I just realized, well, wait a minute, this could work. There's a catalyst. There's no description of any kind of catalyst, minor, big, other. And you're right. I've seen a lot of people who have gone through some serious despair, and they usually will have some external force or element, something that they observe or happens to them that kind of just resets things a little bit.
Yeah.
Versus this is her describing how somebody could feel, generally speaking, because it's not even specific to a person. It's and I don't know. It's I don't know.
Yeah. You would expect a story there where she could turn around and say, I was on the verge of taking my life. And she doesn't even say how she was going to do it. I don't know whether it's pills or a rope or whether she was
well, yeah, I don't expect.
Yeah,
I don't expect that because. Well, no, I don't expect that too, because it could be embarrassing. I mean, honestly, it's like, if we did be like, I just didn't think I could take it anymore. And then one day I can understand that. I could sort of see, like,
yeah, you can understand the skipping over.
I know that often you hear that.
But you would expect at least a turning point, a trigger that changed that turned everything around. She, like you say, in the example of children, she could say, I was at the lowest ebb, I was just about to do something crazy, and I looked up and saw my child there and thought, how can I leave this beautiful child alone in the world? And that changed everything for me, or something happened that turned everything around. So, but there was none of that. She was talking about how other people cope with it. Very much like, you remember the scenario with Amber Heard when she was giving examples of what I think would be described as textbook for PTSD, rather than got PTSD. Yes. It was almost like she'd read a book and said, "Yep, X, Y, and Z is a sign of PTSD." So she got up on the stand and said, "X happened to me, Y happened to me, Z happened to me." Almost. Well, like
Dr. Curry. Yeah, I remember Dr. Curry testified that Amber Heard matched all the qualifications for PTSD exactly. Her score was too high.
But this is almost like what's happened there. It's almost like she's read a book and is repeating what the textbook would have said people go through when they're feeling suicidal.
And it did not work, and that was the turning point, because it made me think, well, I guess there's a reason why I'm here. And
wait a minute, okay, what did she just say?
And pretty empty. And honestly, the suicide attempt is another form of escape.
Yeah.
When you don't feel like you're going to get out of this hole, there's no way to leave, there's nowhere to go. That is one way of leaving. and it did not work. And that was the turning point, because it made me think, well, I guess there's a reason why I'm here. And I'm at the bottom, so there's nowhere to go but up. And I always cite it as the best, worst thing that ever happened to me, because it was when the phoenix rose from the ashes. You know, that was the beginning.
Okay, so is she in a roundabout way claiming that she made an attempt that failed, and the fact that it failed is what pulled her out?
Imagine how much of a bad day that you're having, that you feel that you have to commit suicide. The fact that you can't get anything right, and your life is that bad that you have to top yourself, and then that goes wrong too, probably wouldn't be the catalyst to say, okay, then, well, I guess if I can't even get that right, I better change my plan and get on with living. I might be wrong. I'm not a specialist in this area. But yeah, that would have been probably even more of a bad day, leading to probably a further mental collapse, perhaps more so than a kind of, oh, well, guess that didn't work out. You know, better carry on living life now. It seems like I'm meant to be here. I'd like to know other people's thoughts on this. There are probably people who've been out there, who've been through similar things, who could probably educate me a lot more on this, but who knows? I'd like to see where that leads.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not going to say that, because again, I don't know what the catalyst is going to be. If that was the bottom, you know, many people who have substance abuse problems, life problems and things, they hit a bottom. If that was the bottom, then technically, yeah, I guess you could go up from there. I don't know.
Was the turning point, because it made me think, well, I guess there's a reason why I'm here. And I'm at the bottom, so there's nowhere to go but up. And I always cite it as the best, worst thing that ever happened to me, because it was when the phoenix rose from the ashes. You know, that was the beginning. Yeah.
So in 2016, you spoke out for the first time about being abused, and you became an activist for victims of sexual assault. Your work helped pass the Phoenix Act in California. Tell us about it and why it's so important.
Well, I mean, even since you guys have been on the show, I can't even imagine how many times you've had to talk about some kind of serial abuser and why nothing's being done, and how they can get away with it for so long, and how are there so many women. And a lot of times it's because you're limited by the statute of limitations. And the statute of limitations is the amount of time you have to report crime. Yeah. And they do not reflect what we know about trauma and about intimidation, about...
Boy, look at the bright eyes.
Again. Yeah.
Look at that. I mean, this is not... I mean...
Did she look like she's talking about a victim?
Again, mute and just watch. Just watch that.
Going up against somebody who's very powerful, who has many resources of retaliation to be able to come after you. Right. There's a million reasons why you wouldn't come forward. But very specifically, what trauma does to the brain and how long it takes to process. It takes, on average, 7 to 10 years to be able to process this kind of abuse. Because imagine, you know, somebody says something that hurts your feelings, something bad. It sticks with you, you know, for the rest of your life. Now imagine that 24/7 every day for 4 years. What that does to your brain and to your psyche and your self-esteem, and how long it would take to undo the psychological warfare that has been done, which a lot of victims will tell you is the worst part of the abuse. It's not the physical. It's what they do to your mind, body, and spirit that takes so long to overcome. And right now, when I was trying to get justice in California, the amount of time I had to report was 1 to 3 years. And, those first few years, you're doing what everybody tells you to do, which is try to move on and forget it ever happened. Right. You're running. You are running. And then it catches up with...
You're running. Are you running through flowers? Because you're smiling again.
Mm-hmm. I did notice the hand to the throat when she's talking about the fact that she'd only got 1 to 3 years to report it. But that could be down to the fact that she's actually had the law changed in respect of that. And there could be some memories of how it all went that could have created, like a need to cover the throat. At this point, it's too difficult to say.
I realize I can't run from this anymore. And then you have to start rebuilding yourself. And then, if you're lucky, you rebuild yourself. And then maybe you can think about pursuing justice, you know. And so we need more time.
Sometimes it's too late.
It's
sometimes what the law
the majority of the time it's too late. And abusers know this. And they know there's a statute of limitations. They know all they got to do is scare you long enough until that statute of limitations runs out. In fact, Brian was did an interview in 2012 where he specifically cited the statute of limitations.
So did your work change the statute of limitations?
It did. So the Phoenix Act is a bill that gives survivors more time.
Okay, I think we've got an idea of what's going on. But once again, just like in all the other videos, you know, what Gavin and I think doesn't matter. What do you think? What do you think of this interview? What do you think of her answers? Now, are we being completely unfair by the fact that we're pointing out that she seems to show, I don't know if it's amusement or happiness or joy, but again, I acknowledge that there are no perfect victims. So I really am stumped, and I think I want to look at more videos of her. What do you think, Gavin?
Yeah, I definitely want to see a little bit more of what she's like under other circumstances when she's talked about this in the past. I'd even like to possibly compare it to a video of another person who's been through a similar situation and the way they speak, what words they use and how they look when they're talking about it. You know, maybe 2 or 3 others, just to be able to say, well, you know, these 3 are all the same, this is completely different, or, okay, you know, it can marry up. So that it definitely interests me to at least look at other videos of her and see how she is normally in different circumstances, or talking about this at another point. She could have talked about it that many times, she may have just become cold to it. It may be now, you know, if she's been doing this for many, many years, that it's no longer an emotional ride for her. It's become a business that she's putting on that customer service face while she's telling the story. So it's there's no longer the emotional link when she talks about it. So hard to say. I would definitely know that if I was in the room with her, I could probe and go a little bit further and explore areas that these guys definitely aren't asking, and touch on areas that they're not going near, just to get a little bit more information from her. But with what we've got at the minute, it could go one way or the other.
All right, so for Gavin and me, let us know what you think. We'll see you next time.